is,
I'm stepping in for Deputy John Lahart, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Minister, when the Mother and Baby Homes Commission report was released, many promises were made to survivors. What is the status of the implementation of the 22-point action plan following the publication of the Mother and Baby Homes Commission of Investigation final report? It is important that survivors are aware of progress on the 22 recommendations. Where are we on those?
Thanks very much, Deputy, and I know this is an issue you raise with me on a regular basis, and thanks for your ongoing engagement about this. As you say, in response to the final report of the Commission of Investigation, the Government approved a suite of 22 specific measures. My department is currently finalising a high-level action plan for survivors and former residents of mother and baby and county home institutions, and I intend to bring this action plan to Government and publish it later this month. And once approved, the action plan will support structured implementation with defined governance and monitoring processes for each of the 22 actions. At the same time, my department has been steadily working to develop individual measures to ensure survivors see tangible results as early as possible. And I'll outline some of these here. Firstly, it's important to reiterate that there's a dedicated counselling support service available, and it continues to be available nationwide for all survivors of these institutions. Secondly, I've established a dedicated information management unit within my department with a professional archivist to manage the Commission's archive of records and support access for individuals to their personal information. Obviously, a key element of the Government's response is to develop a scheme to provide financial payments in the form of enhanced medical card. I tasked an interdepartmental group with developing these detailed proposals and having a human rights focus and being informed with significant consultations and engagement with survivors, and I will be bringing costed proposals to Cabinet for approval on this later this month. As you know, Deputy, we published two substantial pieces of draft legislation. The Birth Information and Tracing Bill seeks to enshrine in law the right of access to a full and unredacted birth cert, and this is undergoing pre-legislative scrutiny at the moment. But as I said to the committee last week, my department continues to engage with the Attorney-General in terms of the issues that are arising and in terms of bringing forward early amendments to that. Separately, I'm considering the committee's report on the Certain Institutional Burials Bill, and I think we're all in agreement that the children in the site in Tuam deserve an appropriate burial, and I'm determined to achieve this dignity for them and their families through this bill.
Thank you, Minister, and I do welcome the news because I think it is important. Communication is very important here from the Children's Committee, that we are also working with you and other departments. I suppose my only concern is that while survivors speak of urgency, particularly because there are so many who are much older now than when the Commission began, and they're anxious to receive redress, and this scheme is expected to open in maybe next year. And look, Minister, I do appreciate the work you're doing on this, but I just feel that maybe we should try and have some more communication with different groups, different survivors, and I would ask that because history does not inspire survivors, Minister. Look at the Caranua and look at the Ombudsman report into the Magdalene Redress Scheme. Years later, some women are yet to receive compensation and medical support. We cannot let that happen here. For decades, this state oppressed women and children, and we cannot further harm them by dilly-dallying on these recommendations. Can you assure me that enough urgency is being placed on this? Thank you very much, Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. Those are important points. I will try and offer you reassurance, and I think when we see the action plan with each of the 22 points and how we intend kind of quarter by quarter to implement them, I hope that will provide some reassurance. The point you make about communication is really important, and it's an issue that has been raised with me by survivors when I've met survivors, and particularly when I met survivors groups in Tuam at the end of August. And I have endeavoured to improve the amount of communications we send, particularly through the dedicated email list to survivors, and I think that's been acknowledged. But I also take your point about the importance when it comes to the provision of redress of learning from the mistakes of previous schemes, and that's something that came through very strongly to us in the extensive consultation we did with survivors in terms of the interdepartmental group, and it also came through in the paper that Oireach, the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, did for us, and that is central to the scheme that I'm seeking to design and get government approval for shortly.
Thank you, Minister, and you're right, I have met with you regularly, and I have to say I know that you are totally committed, and that's something I can thank you for. And also I know you've met with some survivors from my own area, and I'm delighted to tell you now that we are working on 5 plaques in the county of Carlow for cemeteries and for buildings. And you know, that to me is something that I feel that we are making that change. It's very slow change, but I'm delighted to be part of my own group in Carlow. So the other area I wanted to ask you was, and I do welcome that you have been asking the local authorities to review the lands that formerly housed mother and baby homes to prevent unsuitable development from proceeding. I think that's really important. And the other thing is to treat sites with, with delicacy, because I'm aware that you are moving on so many of these recommendations and associated works. I am engaging with the committee myself. As you know, I'm on the Children's Committee, Minister, and I'm delighted to be on it. And I know that we're working on the adoption and tracing legislation. And you know, I think that is so important too. But my last question to you is, what is the update in regards to medical cards? I've had a lot of survivors on to me about medical cards, and I just think, as we've said, people are not getting any younger, and I think it's important that we make sure that we get to deliver as many of the recommendations as soon as possible. And thank you again, Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. In terms of the enhanced medical card, they will be provided as part of the redress package along with financial payments, and the detail of that will be set out in the costed proposals I'll bring to Government this month. In terms of local memorialisation, I think that's really important. I think that element of local memorialisation can often be most meaningful for individuals who grew up in an area, who were incarcerated in one of these institutions in their area, and when they see that local recognition of what happened to them, I do think that's valuable, and I recognise the work that you've done with the group you've helped establish in Carlow, and who you introduced me to. The final point then, in terms of the treatment of these sites, particularly in the terms of development plans, it's something myself and Minister O'Brien have been engaging in. I wrote to him a number of months ago, and I know he's engaging with local authorities. I spoke to him about it actually earlier on this week, and work is continuing in terms of the guidance he'll give to local authorities about how these sites should be protected within county and city development plans.
Okay, Mr. Coig.